Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist. Today we're going to be doing a Darklord deck profile. So this is hands down probably one of my favorite decks of all time to play with, and it has just gotten more and more crazy as the support has come out for this deck, even getting a 4,000 beat stick that is absolutely insane, and probably one of the coolest artworks in the entire game that I've ever seen. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below where we have all those awesome rewards like getting your name description for every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron along with Txne. So without further ado guys, let's get straight on into this. So this deck, like I said, is absolutely insane. It's probably one of the decks that draws the most in the entire game that I can think of off the top of my head, and I just absolutely love this deck, especially for the artwork. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Darklord A Shell. So Darklord A Shell is one of the main cards that you want to be using, as you can see from the mat and the card. What this card does is you can discard her and one other Darklord card to draw 2 cards off the top of your deck. Now some of your Darklords share the ability to be able to pay 1,000 life points to shuffle a spell or trap of a Darklord spell or trap from your graveyard back into your deck, and then you apply its effect as if this card had its effect. So basically, for example, if I were to shuffle back into my deck a copy of Darklord Banishment, I would be able to copy the effect to a shell to be able to get an additional search during my turn, which is a pretty good effect just at the cost of 1,000 life points. So a shell has that effect, which is pretty cool. We then play a single copy of Darklord Morningstar. So Darklord Morningstar is very much needed in this deck because you have to use it to fusion summon into your first Darklord, which is the fusion monster. It also has a pretty neat normal summoning effect that if this card is normal summoned to your side of the field or tribute summoned to your side of the field, then you get special summon up to the number of cards that your opponent has on their side of the field that are monsters that are Darklords from your deck with different names, which is a pretty good effect. So for example, if I normal summon out Morningstar to my side of the field, I can special summon out like 4 other Darklords to my side of the field if my opponent has 4 monsters on their side of the field. This card is a really good swarm-based card, and it's just super helpful. It also has kind of a weird effect that once per turn you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of Darklord monsters on the field. If you do, you gain 500 life points for each card sent to the graveyard, which is kind of a weird effect, but it kind of helps the deck a little bit too with all the having to pay life points. We then play a single copy of Teslapakapoka. This card's really good too because it's kind of a hand trap in the deck that helps protect your Darklords. It also shares the ability of paying the 1,000 life points to copy a spell or trap. And if a Darklord monster you control would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can discard this card instead. We then play 3 copies of Darklord Superbia. With it being a trade-in target, I love playing this card as a 3-of. It's super easy just to discard this card to the graveyard, and it also has the ability that when this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target a fairy monster in your graveyard except another copy of itself and special summon that target. So it's a really good card to be able to just revive back to your side of the field and get you an additional summon on your side of the field. We play a single copy of Darklord Zerato. Darklord Zerato, if you have exactly 4 dark monsters in your graveyard with different names, then you can, or you have 4 more dark monsters in your graveyard with different names, you can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 dark monster, and then you can send a dark monster from your hand to the graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls. And if you activate this effect, you destroy this card during the end phase, which is its only downside that it destroys itself, but I absolutely love playing this card as a 1-of in the deck. I play a single copy of Darklord Nargal. Nargal is pretty neat because it gives your Darklords piercing damage, because if a fairy monster attacks a defense position monster, it lets it inflict piercing damage. It also has that copy effect where you can copy the spell or trap in your graveyard by paying 1,000 shuffling it back into the deck. I played 2 copies of Darklord Nazden. Nazden's pretty neat in the deck, and I like playing it as a 2-of. You have to send 2 Darklord cards from your hand to the graveyard other than this card, and then you get to special summon it from your hand. So it can help you unbrick a little bit. As you can see, you play a lot of high-level monsters in the deck. So this card helps you unbrick a little bit by giving you a special summon from hand. I wish it was 1 other Darklord card in your hand, and I would play this card at 3. But 2 is a little bit steep, but at the sometimes you do need to actually send 2 from the hand to the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Darklord Amadas. Amadas, oh, and Nazden shares that ability where you can put a spell card back in the deck and pay 1,000, and then you gain the effect. Amadas also shares that ability. Amadas' only other effect is that you can discard it and another Darklord card to target a Darklord in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is a pretty good effect, but it comes up very infrequently that I actually use its effect. We then play 3 copies of the Indulged Darklord. Indulged Darklord is hands down one of the best normal summons in this entire deck. Her effect is that you can normal or special summon her. If she's normal or special summon, you get to take 2 Darklord monsters from your hand or deck with different levels, except another copy of yourself. You special summon one to your opponent's field, and you add the other to your hand. So she's basically a searcher in the deck, which is really, really, really good. And I really like playing her as a 3-of. I don't play the other Darklord that's a level 4 in the deck because I just don't like the way that she plays in the deck. You can drop a single Superbia or Nargal if you want to play her in the deck as well, but I'm just not a super big fan of playing her. We then play a single copy of Darklord Ukobak. Ukobak, when it's normal or special summon, you get to send a Darklord card from your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty helpful. And rounding out the monsters, we play 2 copies of Arklord Christia, because Arklord Christia, if you have exactly 4 fairies in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then while it's on the field, neither player can special summon monsters, which is pretty cool. And also, when this card is special summoned, you get to target a fairy monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand, which is pretty good as well. And if this face-up card would be sent to the field, to the graveyard, you can place it on the bottom of the deck instead, which is pretty good as well, just to be able to kind of recycle your plays. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. The spells is where the deck really shines, and the traps is where the deck starts to really shine. So we're going to go ahead and round it off. We're going to play a single copy of Monster Reborn. We have more Monster Reborns that are in attributes Monster Reborns, but are in archetype Monster Reborns, but this card is really good just to help you get that additional fairy out of the graveyard. We play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave just stops hand traps against this deck, because you're trying to draw as deep as you can in this deck, and Called by the Grave just stops your opponent from hitting you with a hand trap. We play 3 copies of Super Polymerization, because you play so many darks in this deck. Going to Starving Venom Fusion Dragon is ridiculously easy, especially by using your opponent's copy of Dragoons and Anaconda. We don't play Dragoons in this deck, but we don't mind dealing with it with a copy of Super Polymerization. We then play 3 copies of Banishment of the Darklord. This is basically the Rhoda of the deck. What you do with this card is you add any Darklord card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of Banishment, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just add any of those cards. You can actually get 2 searches off this a turn if you control one of the Darklord monsters that actually let you pay 1,000 and shuffle a spell or trap from your graveyard back in your deck that's a Darklord spell or trap, and copy its effect, which is pretty cool. We play 3 copies of Darklord Contact. Darklord Contact has a pretty neat effect that lets you special summon a Darklord monster from your graveyard in defense position, and you can only use its effect once per turn, but you can copy its effect with another one of your Darklord cards. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, because it helps you dig into the deck a little bit deeper, because the main attribute that you're playing in the deck, hence the name, is Dark Lords, so you're playing dark monsters. Then for the last 3 spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Trade-In, because I believe you have 6 targets in the entire main deck to actually go off with. You have 2 copies of Christia, 1 copy of Nargal, 1 Zerato, and then 3 Superbia. So you actually have 7 targets in the main deck to be able to go in for this particular card, which is pretty helpful to be able to draw a little bit deeper into the deck with your copies of Trade-In and Allure. You essentially have 6 draw cards in the deck, which is really good. Well, actually 9 with your copies of a shell. It just helps out a lot in the deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So we play 1 of each of the Darklord traps, and that is 1 copy of Uprising, 1 copy of Rebellion, 1 copy of Enchantment, and 1 copy of the Sanctified Darklord. So what each one of these do is a little bit interesting. So basically, Uprising is a fusion trap card, which is going to be how you're going to go into your copy of the first Darklord every single time. It lets you send a Darklord monster from your hand or face or field to fusion summon a dark fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your field and or a fusion material that is on that monster, which is pretty cool. Then you can gain life points equal to the original attack of the monster sent to the graveyard to activate this effect, which is pretty good just to be able to add those life points back up. Now, Rebellion has the ability that you send a Darklord monster from your hand or face it from your field to the graveyard, destroy a card on the field. Enchantment lets you take control of an opponent's monster, and Sanctified Darklord lets you negate the effect of a face-up monster on the field, and then you gain attack point, or you gain life points equal to the amount of the attack points the monster had. Now, if you copy their effects, the really cool thing is you don't have to pay the cost, where you send a Darklord monster from your hand or face it from your field to the graveyard to activate any of these effects. For example, if I have one of these in the graveyard and I use a shell on my field, I can copy the effects and not have to send a card from my side of the field to the graveyard to activate the effect, which is a pretty good upside to these cards. So basically, you're going to want to mainly use these from the graveyard. They are really good to draw into because they're really powerful effects, like negating a monster effect, taking an opponent's monster, popping a card, or fusion summoning into your big boss monster. They're really good cards, and you really need to play at least 1 of each of them. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of the first Darklord. So the first Darklord, as you can probably see, is actually Darklord Morningstar. He's just got 8 wings now. But basically what this card does is your opponent cannot target fairy monster you control with effects, then you can only use the effect of one of the following effects of the first Darklord once per turn. And it has the ability, if this card is fusion summoned using Darklord Morningstar as a material, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls, and then during the main phase quick effect, you can pay 1,000 life points to special summon a fairy monster in your hand or graveyard in defense position. So it has a really crazy effect just to get you additional monsters on your side of the field, or destroy all cards your opponent controls, which is really cool. To be able to just board wipe your opponent. If you summon this card, you're pretty much gonna win. We then play 2 copies of the Condemned Darklord. Condemned Darklord is a really good card in this deck because she lets you tribute, you get to tribute summon fairy monsters that require 2 tributes by banishing monsters from your graveyard instead, which is pretty good to be able to just banish fairy monsters from the graveyard to get you tribute summons, because sometimes you'll have multiple copies of, say, a Shell, Superbia, or those monsters in the graveyard that you just don't need multiple copies of, so you'll banish them to actually tribute summon out something like a Nazton or your Darklord Morningstar to your side of the field. She also has the ability that you can discard a card to take a Darklord monster in your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard, which is really cool to be able to just add those cards in your hand, like sending a copy of Superbia to the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Access Code Talker because you do play a bunch of different attributes in the extra deck to give you additional pops on your side of the field. Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax because you can go into this card again pretty easily in the deck, especially playing IP Masquerena in the extra deck. You can kind of surprise your opponent. 1 copy of Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, because you can get this card out on the field pretty easily as well, because she has the ability to be able to use a bunch of cards on your side of the field as long as they have different names to go into this card to give you additional monster negates. Nightmare Unicorn because this card can spin stuff. Phoenix because it can pop spells and traps. Cerberus because it can pop monsters. And then IP Masquerena rounding out the link monsters because you can use her to go into a copy of Appaloosa or Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax during your opponent's turn using monsters on your side of the field. We then play for the Xyz monsters. We're just playing a few Xyz monsters, and then as a number 97 Dragon Golem, this card helps you go into your copy of number 100 extremely easily, using a number 38 as the material to go into your number 100 to give you a 9,000 beat stick on your side of the field, which is pretty helpful. We then play number 35 Ravenous Tarantula because this card, depending on the difference between your life points and your opponent's life points, makes all your monsters on your side of the field gain attack points equal to the difference. I have literally gotten monsters up to 10,000 attack points on my side of the field with multiple monsters on the field because I've paid myself into that position with this card to be able to go into Ravenous Tarantula and be able to win the duel just off of this 1 card. And then for my 1 super poly target, I'm playing a single copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Now if you want to play Mud Dragon, you can play Mud Dragon in the deck as well by dropping the Nightmare Cerberus if you want to play that, or dropping maybe the Appaloosa depending on what you want to play. I kind of would consider dropping the copy of Nightmare Cerberus to play Mud Dragon, but that's totally up to you. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play around with. I really enjoy playing with this deck. It's probably one of my top 3 favorite decks of all time, next to Black Wings and Magical Musketeer. This deck is super fun to play with, and I've actually carried it to a bunch of different tournaments and won tournaments with this deck. So it's super fun, and I highly recommend that you guys pick this deck up. It's not super expensive anymore because the shell actually got reprinted, Nazton got reprinted. All the cards pretty much have been reprinted in this entire deck, which makes it a very budget option for you guys to pick up. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell news so you can come to our notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.